The fear, my friends, is polio. There are a lot of parents whose children are healthy and happy now who live in fear. I know I do.
Finding a vaccine to treat and prevent poliomyelitis would prove to become one of the most important events to occur in medical history, as 57,628 people were affected by the disease in 1952 alone. A fear of polio would continue to rise around the world each day before a solution was finally in sight. It was 1916, and New York was about to experience the first large epidemic, with more than 9,000 cases and 2,343 deaths. The nationwide toll that year would reach 27,000 cases and 6,000 deaths. As summer came around, parents would end up living daily with the gut-wrenching fear of their child contracting the disease. Children restrained from participating in everyday activities like running around with friends, playing outside at the park, and even going to school. Poliomyelitis was a contagious viral illness, with 1 in every 200 cases leading to irreversible paralysis. People of all ages across the globe, but especially children, would begin to feel they had only a cold or fever before symptoms worsened, to extreme fatigue, a lack of reflexes, muscle wasting, loose and floppy limbs, and, in the case of certain infections, even full body paralysis. These symptoms varied greatly, however, and were dependent on each individual case. As a result, many had a difficult time understanding whether or not they actually had the disease. My grandfather, Wallace Grant, experienced a case of polio around the age of 11 or 12 in 1952. This short clip from an interview explains his early symptoms as well as how he was diagnosed.
I think it started when I had a headache or something like that, but I used to have headaches when I was a kid. I must have been sick, but I do remember they took me to the hospital and they put a needle, and I think the needle was like 12 inches long, it felt like it, but they put it into my lower back, into my spine, and they sucked that out of my back. They told me I had polio, and then they quarantined me for I think 2 weeks, but it could have been a little longer than 2 weeks, which meant I had to stay home and basically in bed for that period of time.
Well, I had a friend that I'd known since kindergarten or maybe before who got polio at about the same time. I'm not quite sure exactly the time frame difference, but he was in a breathing device. And I know that at that time, polio tended to cause paralysis of different parts of a body, and it would also either paralyze or make it very difficult for people with polio to breathe. And I don't know if he was in what they called an iron lung or whether he had some kind of other device. I don't recall. But an iron lung at those times was like having a tube, and it can be very claustrophobic. This tube he went from probably his shoulders down to his feet maybe. And inside of it, there was something that caused your chest to move, inhale and exhale, much like you could do when you breathe naturally, but you couldn't breathe naturally, so it forced you to breathe in place of your natural breathing. He lives about a block from me now. I don't see him very often, but I happened to see him about a month ago, and he clearly has some facial distortion, which may trace back to him. I don't know, but it's hard to know what you didn't experience, what you did experience, or what you would have been had you not had that experience. I don't think I had any negative ramifications, but I don't know for sure.
It wasn't until President Roosevelt was heavily affected by polio that the United States population specifically became more educated when the search for a vaccine began. Franklin D. Roosevelt had an intense case of the disease in which his legs were permanently paralyzed, and he was required the assistance of a wheelchair. As it was so early in polio's history, he became somewhat of a face for the disease while he was president. FDR began a fundraising organization later known as the March of Dimes, helping to fund the research needed for vaccine creation. In the first year alone, $1 million were raised and attempts at vaccine discovery began. Commercials and events led by these organizations and celebrity foundations would become a regular sight in between television programs everywhere.
Polio poster boy Debbie Daines takes top applause at the annual fashion show in New York for the March of Dimes. In the spring fashion picture is this black cocktail dress with side panels, worn with a fox-trimmed coat. Actress Helen Hayes, chairman of women's activities for the Polio Fund, watches with Basil O'Connor, national president, as a model shows the new carved silhouette suit for spring. But the rustle of skirts is replaced by the clink of coins as the models make their contribution to the March of Dimes. By the way, have you?
Even as money was raised at an incredible rate, the disease was still worsening everywhere to levels no one ever predicted it would reach. Nothing had been found. Many children unfortunately died while waiting for a treatment, and most soon lost hope for a cure. Polio and the discovery of a vaccine proved to be a very different task compared to many diseases people had experienced at the time.
I think that there was a great fear of polio at that time. A lot of people were getting it. It was really kind of an epidemic, and it was all over the world. It wasn't just here. And so I think people were nervous about it. It was a very, very serious disease at that time, and it was very frightening to the population and probably all over the world. And that was when they didn't have any way of dealing with it until the Salk vaccine came in.
When the first outbreaks occurred, many believed polio to be caused and spread by cats, fleas, rats, monkeys, and some even believed it to be waterborne, as people did everything they could to stay safe. However, research later showed that the disease was actually spread by sneezing, coughing, and contact with human waste. The issue was that this was very similar to how even the common cold was spread. It was difficult to find what made this infection so much worse. The virus reproduced in the mouth and the intestine before reaching the blood and invading the nervous system, killing motor neurons. These cells are vital to instructing how the human body operates. Without them, it was difficult for the body to function. There was still confusion, however, as to why polio was spreading so quickly among children. Many believed, ironically, that the disease became an intense issue because of the increased sanitation in areas of high population. In the past, infants were already exposed to the disease because of poor cleanliness, mainly through contaminated water supplies. With better sanitation, though, exposure to polio was limited to the population until an older age, when a person's immune system may not have been able to understand the illness in order to fight it off. Confusion in the cause and spreading of poliomyelitis contributed greatly to the intensity of the disease. In 1947, Dr. Jonas Edward Salk was recruited by the University of Pittsburgh to begin his research, and he received a grant to start his project. In 1952, the United States saw a record 57,268 cases.
Studies that my associates and I have been doing at the University of Pittsburgh have indicated clearly that it is possible to induce antibody formation in children by suitable injections with a kill virus vaccine. More than that, it appears that there are no harmful ill effects accompanying these inoculations.
The next year, Salk and his team were rumored to have developed a potentially safe, injectable polio vaccine. Soon, there was no shortage of volunteers to help run the events for the first vaccinations. In 1953, almost 2 million children participated in the trials. Dr. Salk knew that children already affected by polio could not contract the disease again. So, they were the ones to participate in most trials, without a risk of the vaccine attacking the bloodstream in the same way that the infection had before.
Jonas Salk was the guy that came up with the vaccine, and I think people felt relieved because all of a sudden there was a remedy or a preventive measure for polio.
Just weeks later, results were announced that the vaccine had been successful.
If the results from the observed study areas are employed, the vaccine could be considered 80 to 90% effective against paralytic poliomyelitis.
People all over the United States and soon the rest of the world were now able to rely on a safe treatment to save themselves and their loved ones from the deadly virus. A new path of medicinal discovery was enabled for all when the fear of a debilitating and deadly disease was now in the past. people were beginning to see the possibility of a world without polio. Dr. Salk broke the barriers of medicine itself, allowing others to follow in his footsteps to save the world.
I think the Salk vaccine was a real breakthrough. Penicillin was a real breakthrough. I think there are a lot of breakthroughs like that, and there's always resistance to them from various people and for various reasons. But if you look at the evolution of medication, medicines, the vaccines that have been developed have been amazing.
Who owns the patent on this vaccine?
Well, the people, I would say. There is no patent. Could you patent the sun?